Hello there, I'm Paul Glumaz. This is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. And you may be wondering about the change of scenery this day, Thursday, the 19th of March. Well, I don't want to do this in a closed space with a lot of people around. I'm doing this in Grand Avenue Park in Everett. And it's a beautiful day. And a lot of people are out because they got nothing else to do, for obvious reasons. We are now in the coronavirus shutdown or process. So, where are we now in world history? Well, these things happen historically. We had the bubonic plague. We had the Spanish flu. We had the big flu in '57. You know, the human beings are and human civilizations play a very major role in the biosphere, and there is an interaction between humanity, not just the economics, but the economics that sustains human being is in a real-time relationship with the biosphere. And when human beings do not obey the command to develop, to improve, and instead they lower the conditions of life of their fellow humans, they open the door for infectious diseases, new and old, and pandemics. In other words, I can guarantee you there would be no Ebola in Africa if the living standard of the African population was better and the nutritional standard was better. So these things come about by the nature of things. If human civilization is not able to sustain the appropriate level of nutrition among its members and the level of development, then ultimately these kind of things will happen. You had this in Europe with the bubonic plague. Europe had already been economically decimated by the Venetian bankers, just like today our civilization has been devastated in many ways by the same financial policies. And now we have to change. Nature is telling us we have to change. If we don't change, well, this is what happens. And so I look at the onset of the coronavirus as a marker for necessary change. Now, a lot of people are saying in different ways that this is a biowarfare situation. Now, I don't have a conclusive proof that it's not. But if it is a biowarfare operation, it is also a product of the same problem, of the same financial interests, of the same policies of plundering and looting. In this case, they want to reduce the world's population. This is where humanity has to respond. And this is where our nation has to respond. They have to respond in a manner that not only effectively deals with this contagion, but in so doing ends the mentality that tolerates the circumstances we've been in. And it's precisely in the emergency measures that are being taken at this time that you have the suspension of the rules-based system of the empire. The empire's rules that have controlled us, has wrapped around us, from NAFTA to the WTO to the IMF to all of these rules, just in time, globalization, all of that has created the vulnerability that we are currently in. And if you mobilize to deal with this coronavirus, you're also in effect mobilizing to end the rules-based order, which is the empire. So we've come to the point where the nation under Donald Trump and other nations similarly have to act in a way that is completely outside of the imperial system in order to survive. So the question is, and the question that has not yet been resolved, is whether or not the financial system, which has to be bailed out at this time because it is collapsing, comes first or the people come first. And at this point, there is no possibility of fulfilling both those functions. Either the people come first or the financial institutions, which are bankrupt, come first. And that is where we are. We're at a juncture in world history where nations, especially the United States, have to make the decision to either kill their population on behalf of the bankers or go ahead and end the power of the bankers. And Lyndon LaRouche has put forward these remedies. We've been campaigning for this for 2 decades now. And the issue is, will Donald Trump ultimately end up doing what Helga Zepp-LaRouche just called for yesterday, which is freezing the financial markets and ultimately moving towards a Glass-Steagall protection of the commercial banking system, a firewall between the commercial banking and the investment banking. And at the same time, you would have to freeze the financial markets. So that's where we are. And we're going there very fast. And we might be there by the time you get to hear this. Maybe not, but this is how fast it's going. The cessation of economic activity in order to sequester people, to slow down the rate of the virus, is also triggering further collapse of the financial system. And the massive stimulus package that's being put out is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to solve the financial problem. It may keep people, it might get some money to people so that they can purchase goods or whatever, but it's not going to solve the problem. We are looking at chaos. We are looking at a crisis that can only be dealt with by a nation organized as if in a war, with a top-down directionality, mobilizing the resources to build up new hospitals, to build the ventilator machines, to build all of this. Now, why do you have to do this? By slowing the virus down, you essentially slow down the rate of infection. And as you slow down the rate of infection, you actually are able to contain the virus in such a manner that you don't have the overwhelming of our resources by people who are dying, and that's very important. You got to stop the transmission. That's extremely important. If the transmission rates reach a certain stage, then you're going to have a breakdown, a complete breakdown of the healthcare infrastructure, and with a complete breakdown of the health infrastructure, you have a breakdown of our society. So the fact that people come first, as far as it currently is going, at least in part, is very important. It's a very important aspect of the situation. And that if that continues to hold, then ultimately the people are going to have to come first with the next crisis, the next pandemic, which is the pandemic of the banking collapse, the banking financial collapse. That's the next pandemic. We have the coronavirus now, and soon we will have the financial collapse, and that's how this is going to play. So now to make sure that we move internationally, not have chaos, we need to have the United States, Russia, India, China, and other nations work out agreements on how they're going to, and what kind of monetary system we're going to have, what kind of international relationship among nations we're going to have. And that means an end to the IMF, an end to the WTO, an end to the whole system where the city of London, which is not a real city, it's a 1 square mile area, and Wall Street essentially dictate the agreements. Through the financial speculation, they control the credit, what is available as credit. The central banks are mainly there to bail out the banks. They're not there to provide credit for the society. They're not there to provide credit for the nation. The reason you have central banks is they're a creature of the international banking system, is to provide the liquidity, to maintain liquidity in the financial system so that they can continue to operate in this very speculative manner, not so that they can make loans necessarily to the real economy. The commercial banking sector is a whole different issue. This is a whole different issue. But the commercial banking system is now there also only to prop up the banks. So we're in that crisis where you're going to have to make the decision, and it's not going to be pumping money in. You're going to have to separate the commercial from the investment, and then you're going to have to create the credit internally for development. And that's not just for this country, but it's for every country. Every country on the planet has to do this, if they and so forth. So that's where we are, and this is what I've been involved for the movement for since '74 when I joined. That's now 46 years. That's what LaRouche has been doing for 49 years since he made this prediction back in 1971. And I do suspect that Donald Trump does understand this. And one of the healthy, positive developments in respect to that is the fact that the governors of California, Newsom, the governor of New York, Cuomo, and the governor of Washington, Inslee, are fully cooperating with the president in this emergency, in this mobilization. The governors are cooperating. And what this does is it breaks the whole control partisanship. It begins to break, it doesn't quite, but it begins to break the whole control partisanship that's kept the country unable to deal with these things. Now you have a president who's coordinating with governors. They are now moving, and so forth. Now, one of the more troubling situations is the kind of thing you're getting on Tucker Carlson among the so-called conservatives, the right wing, is you're getting this whole thing of China made the virus, China caused the problem, it's China's virus, they're out to get us, China really hates us, they hate us, and so on and so forth. That whole mentality is what the British are playing. They're playing to Rupert Murdoch and Fox News. They're playing this China's out to get us. China is out to rule the world, and we are about to become their subjects, and so on and so forth. And so that whole mentality is there. And a lot of these people are backing Trump, and Trump had to rely on them in order to survive the whole impeachment process, to survive the whole insurrection that was being run through another element of the British establishment, which was the Obama apparatus. The Obama apparatus was running a massive insurrection internally inside the government and outside the government. They were threatening anybody in the Democratic area that if they were to cooperate with Trump, there would be repercussions. And the apparatus of the intelligence community and the FBI still maintain a capability to blackmail people and to threaten people. And so you have billionaires like Bloomberg and Steyer and Soros threatening anybody that stood in the way of the resistance with opposition and so forth and so on. So that whole environment is now being broken by this crisis. But now we have this right-wing element, which is, you have this Falun Gong cult. It's a total cult, man. It's a psychotic cult that is being massively financed. And they're saying, well, China's really bad. They harvest organs, and and that's all they say. They harvest organs, they harvest organs, they harvest organs. And this Falun Gong cult is, of course, very much involved with the British intelligence and with the monarchy and so forth. And they're promoting this whole anti-China thing. And they're at the same time they're pretending to be the arch defenders of Donald Trump. And it's this whole China did it, China's the enemy, is an incredible problem. And in response to that, you've had the Chinese point out to the possibility that the virus was introduced into the United States by the United States and so forth. So now you have that whole thing being triggered. And then you have Piers Corbyn, the brother of Labor leader uh, 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 Jeremy Corbyn, coming out saying that Gates and Soros are involved. They were doing all this stuff with vaccines, and they did this dry run study in October, just before the coronavirus in New York, just before the coronavirus came out. So now that's saying, well, they were involved, but I suspect that it's not any of that. I suspect that nature has a way of being far more efficient than biological warfare creators, and I think the Dr. Osterholm, who is an expert in this area in both biowarfare and infectious diseases, particularly those involving coronaviruses, has been warning that this was coming, and he was warning it based not on some biowarfare thing, but on the basis of the way these things were mutating. So now we're at that moment where nature has given us the signal, uh, or the enemy of humanity has given us a signal, if indeed it is biowarfare, that we need to change if we want to survive. And that is what's happening. There is a change going on. Whether that change will accelerate to an actual fundamentally new paradigm, that's up for grabs. That's we don't know yet. That has to be determined, and that's why I'm hoping that those of you who watch this do everything possible to, at this moment, begin talking about Glass-Steagall, dealing with the financial crisis, because that's the next step in this whole situation. So it's a beautiful day here, as you can maybe notice. I don't know if you notice it on the camera. And I've never, eerie moment for me, because I've been expecting this for 46 years. And here it is. And I was 23 at that time. What did I know? Now I'm 69. And I look at it, and it's a very strange feeling for me. It's not like a shock or something like that, because I've been living it for 46 years, actually longer. I was thinking along these lines before I even became active in the LaRouche movement. Probably as early as, you know, 18 or 19 or 17. I was thinking along these lines. And that the way things were going weren't very good. But now we're here, and it's incumbent upon us to make the necessary changes if we want to survive. And the worst thing that we have to deal with is the fact that um, the individual is panic. The worst thing we have to deal with is panic. As long as we stay organized as a society and we act to deal with the crisis, we have a chance of survival. As people waking up to the reality, like Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, people woke up. They were living in a dream world up until that moment. They had no idea what was going on in the world. They were living their wonderful American life. You know, everything was calm. The war was over there. We didn't have to deal with it. And now, and then Pearl Harbor hit, and people went, "What? What happened? We didn't know this was going to happen." Oh my! Well, now we're in a similar situation. We have, in effect, a biological Pearl Harbor, but it's been there all along. LaRouche has been warning about this all along. In 1974, we set up the Biological Holocaust Task Force that looked into the interaction between the policies that were coming from the banking community through the IMF on the world's population. And we said this is going to cause pandemics. We were saying that 45 years ago. And there were pandemics, but they were stopped. They had the AIDS pandemic, you had the Ebola pandemic, but they were dealt with. But now we are dealing with something far more contagious, and something that will have to be dealt with. And if it's not dealt with, uh, we're finished. Now, in poorer countries in Africa, where it's starting to get underway, They have no way to defend against it. Uh, Poor countries in Latin America, they have no way to defend against it, and it's not clear how it's going to spread there. But it doesn't look like this virus itself has seasonal issues. It looks like they don't. It doesn't abate during the summer. It's going to be here during the summer. So in Singapore, but then I'm not an expert in this area. I'm not an expert in this area, so I shouldn't comment on a virus, on this virus. But um, but I'm one of those people. I'm 69. I'm one of those people that has to be very concerned. I believe I'm healthy, but I'm 69. My immune system may not be what it was when I was 25. You know, and so I could get it and die, and that would not and that would leave certain people that depend on me without me to help them make it through things, and that's true for a lot of people my age, and also. Uh, So this has had quite an impact on me personally, because, and I'm taking precautions. I'm being very careful. That's why we're doing this in the open air, and I hope we can continue to do this. So you have my email, and as a result, we're not going to be doing meetings in the Seattle area. We're going to be doing meetings over the phone, teleconferencing. And if you want to be in on those meetings and in on those discussions, send me your email, and I'll send you that information. Um, so as now, this whole coronavirus thing has created this. The crisis has been part of the crisis, but the crisis was coming anyhow in the financial system. But in this crisis, the the electoral politics have become second, third, or fourth, or fifth. They are not so important anymore. The fact that Joe Biden, who's clearly showing signs of in beginning of dementia, is winning all these primaries, and he's getting all these endorsements, including from today from Tulsi Gabbard, is saying something very weird, that a person who's showing signs of dementia is now the putative Democratic nominee, unless they change it at the convention. But who knows if they'll even have an open convention? Maybe they'll have to do it through Skype. They have a convention through Google Hangout, Skype, or Zoom, or something else. That's how weird this situation is. So you don't even know if there's going to be a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in 2020. You don't know who it's going to be. Putatively, Biden is now the nominee. But so what? That could change. So it's totally weird. It's totally bizarre. This situation with the Democratic Party is totally bizarre. And the reason it is is because Obama destroyed the Democratic Party. How did he do it? Because he physically threatened all his opponents within the Democratic Party. He threatened to have them killed. He threatened to blackmail them. He threatened to have things happen to them if they didn't go along with him and what he was promoting. So what happened is the Democratic Party leadership and the senators and congressmen from the Democratic Party, for the most part, became fearful, and they became very subject to fears. And because of that fear, they not only went along with Obama, but they went along with the whole cult of Obama. And as a result of that, they lost the moral fitness to be political leaders. And so that is why you have such a bankruptcy in the Democratic Party. The bankruptcy of the Democratic Party is not just corruption. It is from the billionaires, but it's also they didn't. None of them had the courage to stand up to Obama, who represented everything that they were for in the FDR tradition. Everything that Franklin Delano Roosevelt represented was opposed by Obama. Everything involving the union movement, everything involving protection for our people, everything involving maintaining the infrastructure, maintaining the healthcare infrastructure. Obama was involved in privatization, public part, taking that all down. And if you were a Democrat and you represented your constituency and what Obama was doing was going to hurt your constituency, then you would be threatened and you would go along. And so when you do that, you essentially destroy your very capability, your very moral capability to be a leader. And that is why you see such incredible performance of all these candidates. They show no leadership quality whatsoever. And so you have Biden, who who was never very popular in when he was running for president, and he was picked out of the heap of 1 or 2 percenters by Obama and made vice president. He's now the putative nominee. That is totally insane. That is part of the whole breakdown of the power of this financial system, which is now being dealt heavily below. Many people are saying the virus is coming from that layer, but actually, if it is, it's going to end their power forever. And as far as the green movement goes, the green movement is finished. The mobilization of our resources to deal with the crisis effectively ends the whole development orientation of the green movement. And so this is where we are.
Common stock investments have helped to make our country prosperous and powerful. Owning a share in American industry is like owning a share in the future of our nation. But remember, John Q, there is a risk as well as an advantage in owning any kind of property. So get the facts before you put your money to work.